Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, boys and girls, children of all ages. Please podcast responsibly. I know, as my friend Stacy loves to hear, I know I'm overdue. I was going to do a podcast, but a funny thing happened to me on the way to my podcast. I was sick for about 2 weeks. I had some kind of weird chest congestion, sinus thing going on. I don't know what it is. As you can tell, I'm not quite sounding myself. The deep voice. It's kind of sexy and I like it. The nasally, scratchy throat, not so much. So, for all those of you who are suffering, I say have some tea. Today's selection is something called Mandarin Mimosa. It's from Tivana. I don't know. I want to try something different than just plain old green tea. It's alright. It's not great. It's closer to lawn clippings, I think, than any other tea I've had, but it's not horrible. Lots to get into this week, so let's get into it. The first thing I want to talk about is something that is still fresh in everyone's minds. I am sure we all know about the recent tragedy in Uvalde, Texas. First of all, my heart goes out to all those parents. I can't possibly imagine something like that happening to my child. I don't know how I would feel. I don't know how I'd react. I don't know what I'd do. I know I would not be. Now I'm going on speculation and rumor and hearsay. I fully admit that up front. But if it's true and the cops just stood around not doing a thing, well then shame on them. My first instinct would have been to go in, kill the dirtbag, and save the children. That should be first and foremost. Above anything else, save the kids. Now, I don't know what happened. I wasn't there. I don't know what went on in the minds of the cops that were there, or the sheriffs, or whoever. Whatever law enforcement was there in whatever capacity they were there in, they were wrong and they did a horrible thing, and there's honestly no excuse whatsoever for what they did. I don't care about policies or procedures or departmental things or anything. You're a cop. Your job is to protect and serve. Emphasis on the protect part. Now, of course, this opens up an entire can of worms, like a truckload of worm cans, if you will, about gun control and gun violence and all these things. And I keep coming back to gun control doesn't work the way they think it's going to, or will not work the way they think it's going to. And I say that because you have law-abiding citizens that own firearms. They own 1 or 100 guns, and they've never shot anyone. They've never aimed their gun at anyone. They've never killed anyone. It's in a box in the closet, and that's all well and good. You have people on both sides making some good arguments, some not so good arguments, and I really don't want to tear those down too much, but I do not own a gun. However, I've wanted to own a gun for a long time for protection for my family, because obviously the argument that you don't need a gun, that's what we have cops for, has gone out the window. It doesn't matter anymore. That's a non-starter for me, because the cops are not always going to show up. They could take up to a half hour to respond, and by that time it's too late and you're dead, whereas it would take me about 30 seconds to run to my room or wherever the gun was, get the gun, shoot the guy or guys, and protect my friends and family. I think that's the main reason for owning a gun in this country, is for protection. Now, there are bad people on both sides of that. There's always going to be bad guys, always, no matter what we do. Until Jesus himself comes back, this is the way the world is. Now, I'm not saying that there shouldn't be stricter rules in some cases. I suppose you don't want someone who's certifiably crazy owning a weapon. That being said, who do we leave it up to decide what is crazy and what is sane enough to own a firearm? I don't know. I'm not an expert. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a head shrink. I don't know what the answer is there. Following that further, we have all these red flag laws and whatnot. And basically it says if someone's too dangerous to own a gun, they shouldn't own one. That goes back to what I just said about who gets to determine what's crazy and what's not. Is it all clinical? Do all these people get to go through some kind of clinical therapy sessions and evaluations and whatnot to say, okay, you can have one, you can't because you're just nuts. I don't know where the line is for that. I don't know who gets to decide that. It's very arbitrary in a lot of cases. Sometimes there are clear-cut cases of like, oh my God, he's nuts, he should not be anywhere near a weapon. But that's not going to stop him from picking up a rock or a stick or a baseball bat or whatever and doing the job just a lot slower and a lot messier. The other thing is there are arguments that it's harder to get a license or to drive a car than it is to buy a gun. That's patently not true. It's very easy to get a driver's license. It's not so hard to buy a firearm, at least in my experience of people I know that have done it and things that I've read and things that I've researched. It's a lot harder because there are background checks and there are things that you have to go through, and you can't have a gun delivered to you in the mail. You could buy a gun online, but it's got to be delivered to an actual dealer. Now, how these people that are doing these things and perpetrating these crimes are getting the guns, I think in a lot of cases, either they're not obtaining them legally, so gun control and gun laws won't work in that case. They won't do a thing to really stop it because people will always find a way to get a gun. Now, one argument could say, just get rid of guns altogether, which, let's face it, it's never going to happen. Maybe not in my lifetime anyway. I don't see it happening now. If future generations have some kind of utopia and everything is happy and butterflies and unicorns and it's all hunky-dory, great, then by all means get rid of guns. But until then, I don't see it happening. And it's funny, they always push, you know, after a tragedy happens. Well, where were these people 20 or 30 years ago? When I was a kid, I knew friends that went hunting. I knew people that owned guns, but it wasn't a big deal. It's like, all right, I'm going hunting this weekend. Okay, cool. You know, and there wasn't mass shootings in school. Excuse me. More tea for my throat. It just was a different mindset. So what has changed? I think a lot of it is nature and nurture of kids growing up today. You know, they're being bullied, they're being picked on. I was picked on. I was a victim of a bully many times throughout my early life, through grade school, a little bit into junior high. High school, I finally stood up to the bully and I did something that made him stop. And I never ever had that issue again. So bullying is a big factor. People feeling like they have no alternatives other than to grab a gun. Okay, again, I get that. It's a horrible situation that you're in. But going home, grabbing your gun and shooting somebody is not the answer. At least I don't think it is now. That being said, I also do not subscribe to the theory that violence never solves anything. It absolutely solves things. If you're being bullied, excuse me, and the only way to make them stop is through beating up the bully or some kind of physical altercation that makes them stop, then yeah, I am 100% behind that. Now, I don't say you should just go out and beat up anybody or everybody all the time, because that's obviously not an answer, but neither is acquiescence, neither is pacifism. You know, being a pacifist is great until someone punches you in the nose. What do? Do you just stand there and take it, or do you strike back? I don't know. Every situation and every person is different and requires its own amount of input and thinking things through. Excuse me. I'm still not over this cold yet. So, I don't know if that clears anything up or makes it clear where I stand, but I'm absolutely 100% for gun ownership. I am mostly against the gun laws and the gun restrictions that they want to impose upon us, because it makes it impossible for the people that may need a gun to get one, and it does absolutely nothing to curb gun violence anywhere else, because people are always going to, if there's a gun available, someone's going to find it, someone will gain access to it, And while I'm thinking about it, my favorite president, air quotes, the commander-in-chief, that guy in the White House, it's funny how his press opportunities took him to places where he went. I don't want to say anything negative or bad about it, but I think it's kind of ridiculous that he went for these photo ops. And meanwhile, places like Chicago had one of the worst records of gun violence and whatnot in recent years in the last week, or somewhere around Memorial Day anyway, and he has nothing to say about that. No one ever talks about places like Chicago, where gun violence is rampant, and you have all these gun-free zones that don't mean anything to anyone, because if someone's coming to kill you, or they want to kill a bunch of people, those signs do absolutely nothing. I can't imagine a bad guy ever going, oh, gun-free zone, gotta stop, gotta go back home now, sorry, thanks, I didn't see your sign. So, there's got to be a happy ground somewhere, a happy medium somewhere, if you will. I don't know what that is. Thankfully, I'm not a politician. That makes my life a lot easier, that I don't have to worry about it, I don't have to deal with that. But I will protect my family and my friends at any cost. That's just me. That's how I am. Man, I apologize. I will have to go back and try and edit those coughs out. Hopefully I can do it. I don't want to leave this on a negative note, and nor do I want to take away from the horrific tragedy that took place. But I want to I do want to end up on a more of a positive, upbeat note. So with that being said, I will continue praying for the families and the victims of any violence anywhere. And I will trust that God has a plan to get us out of this. And if I don't have that, I have nothing. So keep praying, keep positive thoughts, prayers, good vibes, all that stuff, whatever you believe in. Just keep them coming, and maybe we can heal the planet a little bit. Moving on. Recently, I was fortunate enough to watch Stranger Things Season 4, Volume 1. If you haven't seen any of it, I highly recommend it. As a matter of fact, it's one of the few shows that you will ever hear me talk about and recommend other people watch. Basically, it's a bunch of pre-high school kids that get into adventures, and there's there's D&D, there's monsters, there's bad guys, there's awesome 80s music. In one season, most of it takes place in the mall, and it was like a flashback to my childhood when I was in high school. So that was really cool. I was also a D&D nerd back in the early 80s. So it really hits home for me to watch other people playing, thinking, cool, I was a nerd, but I wasn't alone. We played every week for a while. I either played with a group of friends after high school, or we had a private session with other people, usually like on Friday or Saturday nights. That was our big night. Order pizza or some kind of food and run a session of D&D. And it was always fun. It was always awesome, and I enjoyed it, and I really miss it. And I wish I was still playing now. The other thing I want to talk about is Obi-Wan. Oh my goodness. What a great show. I think it's probably the best Disney Plus Star Wars whatever crossover yet. Ewan McGregor was made to play that role. He reminds me of Alec Guinness when I saw the first one in 1977. Yes, I am that old. I was able to see the first one in the movie theater. It's the first movie that my mother let my brother and I go to on our own, so that was cool too. I really enjoyed that aspect of it. But check it out. Check out Stranger Things. You can stream them all on that streaming channel I won't mention because I don't like it, but I will watch their shows occasionally. Thanks for listening. I know this is shorter than my normal episodes. I'm sorry for that, but as you can tell, I can't keep talking, so thank you for being here. I hope you got something out of this. Hope you enjoyed it. Keep coming back. I love you, and God bless.